Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In the last few weeks, the world has witnessed one of the most chaotic and turbulent times in Vladimir Putin's rule. What was once a symbol of dominance and control has turned into a storm of political, military, and economic struggles. This has truly been Putin's month of hell, as Ukraine and Europe together are shaking the very foundations of Russia's power. The war that Putin once expected to be a quick, decisive victory has become a long and draining battle, both on the battlefield and within his own country. The consequences of this prolonged conflict are now reaching deep into the Russian system, revealing cracks that were long hidden under the surface of propaganda and fear. From the outside, Russia's image has changed dramatically. What used to be seen as a strong, confident global player is now increasingly viewed as a state in decline. Its aggressive stance, instead of bringing respect or fear, has isolated it from the world. Sanctions have crippled its economy, blocking access to vital resources and technology. European nations that once depended on Russian oil and gas have moved rapidly to find alternatives, cutting down one of Moscow's strongest tools of influence. Putin once used energy as a weapon, but that weapon is now losing its power. Europe's unity, strengthened by the shared goal of resisting Russian aggression, has taken many by surprise. Even countries that used to stay neutral have shifted toward cooperation with NATO, creating a wall of opposition around Russia. This isolation is a reflection of how far Russia has fallen in global standing. For Putin, who always dreamed of restoring Soviet-era influence, watching that dream crumble is nothing short of humiliating. Inside Russia, the situation is even more concerning. The government is doing everything it can to maintain the illusion of control, flooding television and social media with stories of strength and victory. But ordinary Russians are living a very different reality. Prices for food and fuel are rising, jobs are disappearing, and the constant fear of being drafted into the war has created an atmosphere of silent panic. Thousands of young men have already fled the country to avoid conscription, leaving behind families who no longer trust their leaders. The once proud spirit of nationalism is fading as more soldiers return home in body bags. Mothers, wives, and children are starting to question what this war is really for. Behind the polished walls of the Kremlin, rumors of tension and disagreement are growing. Some of Putin's closest allies, once loyal without question, are quietly starting to distance themselves, fearing they may go down with him if things continue to collapse. The interior of Russia feels unstable, restless, and angry. While no one dares to openly challenge Putin yet, the cracks in his control are becoming more visible every day. On the battlefield, Russia's performance has been a mixture of chaos and desperation. Despite its large army and advanced weapons, the Russian military has failed to achieve any major breakthrough in months. Ukrainian forces, backed by powerful Western intelligence and advanced weaponry, continue to resist with remarkable strength. Drones, precision missiles, and new battlefield tactics have allowed Ukraine to hit deep into Russian territory, targeting supply depots, command centers, and even oil facilities. Each successful Ukrainian strike not only weakens the Russian military, but also sends a psychological shockwave through the Kremlin. Meanwhile, Russian troops at the front are struggling with poor morale, lack of equipment, and confusing orders. Many of them are young, untrained, and unwilling to fight a war they no longer understand. Reports of desertions and mutinies are becoming more common, painting a picture of an army that is losing its spirit. Putin's generals are under immense pressure to show results, yet no amount of propaganda can hide the fact that the war is going terribly wrong. The longer this war continues, the greater the toll it takes on Russia's safety and stability. Putin has tried to rely on nuclear threats and intimidation to keep his enemies cautious, but these tactics are no longer as effective as before. The West no longer reacts with fear every time Moscow makes a threat. Instead, Ukraine's allies continue to send more aid, more weapons, and more support. Inside Russia, safety is also becoming a major concern. Acts of sabotage, explosions, and mysterious fires have increased, suggesting that resistance movements might be growing. Cyber attacks and information leaks are becoming frequent, showing that even the Kremlin's digital defenses are not as secure as they once were. Putin's control over his vast country is being tested from every direction militarily, economically, and socially. The very safety mechanisms he once relied on to protect his regime are now showing signs of weakness. Yet, despite all of this, Russia still possesses certain strengths that keep it relevant on the world stage. Its immense natural resources, oil, gas, and minerals continue to give it leverage, especially with countries in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Its nuclear arsenal still commands global attention. Putin's ability to manipulate narratives and use propaganda keeps a portion of the population loyal, even as things worsen. He has also built new alliances with countries like China, Iran, and North Korea, which provide him with trade, weapons, and political backing. However, these partnerships are not without cost. China, for example, benefits greatly from Russia's economic desperation, buying oil and gas at discounted prices. Iran and North Korea supply weapons, but they expect political favors in return. These new relationships show that Russia is no longer leading, it is depending on others to survive. Putin's unique selling point used to be his ability to project power and independence. Now, that image is being replaced by one of dependence and vulnerability. The true cost of this war is staggering. Russia's economy has shrunk dramatically, inflation is rising, and industries are struggling to function without Western components. The ruble continues to weaken, and international investors have pulled out almost completely. Thousands of young professionals, scientists, and entrepreneurs have left the country, seeking a future elsewhere. This brain drain is damaging Russia's long-term potential, leaving behind an aging population and a shrinking workforce. The human cost is even worse. Tens of thousands of soldiers have died, and many more have been wounded. Civilians in both Russia and Ukraine are suffering. Entire towns have been destroyed, and millions have been displaced. The war has also divided families, turning neighbors into enemies. The social fabric of Russia, once proud and resilient, is slowly tearing apart under the weight of this endless conflict. For Putin personally, this is becoming a defining period of his career. His image as the strongman who could outsmart the West is fading. Every failed military campaign, every new sanction, and every public protest adds to the growing sense that his era may be approaching its end. Yet he remains defiant. In his speeches, he blames the West for trying to destroy Russia, portraying himself as a defender of national pride. This narrative still resonates with some citizens who fear instability or who long for the old days of Soviet strength. But the world outside Russia sees a leader cornered by his own mistakes. The war that was supposed to restore Russia's greatness has instead exposed its weaknesses. Meanwhile, Europe stands stronger than it has in decades. NATO has expanded, defense budgets have risen, and public opinion has shifted firmly against Moscow. Ukraine, once underestimated, has become a symbol of resistance and courage. Its people continue to fight for their land, proving that determination and unity can stand up to a much larger power. European nations are also accelerating their transition away from Russian energy, building a future where Moscow's influence is greatly reduced. What was meant to divide Europe has instead united it, creating a stronger and more coordinated front against aggression. This geopolitical shift is one of the greatest unintended consequences of Putin's war, and one that will define Europe for generations. As winter approaches, both sides prepare for another phase of struggle. For Russia, this could mean further economic decline, more battlefield losses, and increasing unrest at home. For Ukraine, it is another test of endurance, but one thing is clear: this conflict has already changed the course of history. Putin's month of hell is not just a bad chapter in his leadership. It is a turning point that may determine the future of Russia itself. The once unshakable leader now faces growing uncertainty from within and overwhelming pressure from abroad. His grip on power, while still firm on the surface, is starting to tremble beneath the weight of his own ambitions. In the end, what we are witnessing is not just a political crisis, but a historical reckoning. Russia's attempt to reassert its dominance has backfired, leaving it weaker and more isolated. Europe and Ukraine, through resilience and unity, have managed to do what few thought possible: stand up to one of the most powerful nations on earth and hold their ground. The coming months will reveal whether Putin can find a way out of this disaster, or whether this truly marks the beginning of the end for his rule. One thing is certain: the echoes of this conflict will be felt far beyond the borders of Russia and Ukraine. It will shape the global order, redefine alliances, and remind the world that even the most powerful empires can crumble when built on fear and aggression. That's the reality of Putin's month of hell, a moment when the tables turned. When Europe and Ukraine together began tearing apart the myth of Russian invincibility, leaving behind a legacy of chaos, loss, and the haunting question of what comes next for the Kremlin and its leader.